Well, over the next few weeks, we're going to be teaching a brand new teaching series called Everyone Everywhere. John and I got so excited when we came up with this title. It's so creative. Everyone Everywhere. It's just, that's it. And all the time, at once. And so what is this, what is this most weird, bizarre title, Everyone Everywhere, mean? What it means is we're just going to try and answer the question, who is my neighbor? What does it mean to love my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Everyone everywhere. What does it mean to love someone other than just loving myself? And I don't think it could be any more timely than what we're walking through in our world right now. What does it actually look like to love your neighbor, regardless of who they are, what they look like, where they come from, what they believe? What does it look like to really do? I think this is an incredibly important question that all of us we're setting out to actually ask. And before we leave our time today, in just the next few minutes, I'm going to give you, I hope, a better question that can have a direct effect on how you see God, how you see yourself, and how you see this world, that could change your life this week by how you answer this better question that I'm going to give you in a little bit. Now, this last week was a big week for our family. He's probably hate that I'm going to do this, but our son, Elijah, who's here in the room, our son, Elijah, turned 18 on Monday. How insane is that? Don't clap for that. Don't you dare clap for that. It's not okay. We're not okay with it. And so we have been celebrating him and his friends and our family. And this last week, some of you may or may not know, but I've been off social for the last 3 months, and it's been delightful. And so I went back in to Instagram this last week. I know, that's how I felt, to post a birthday blessing for my son and to honor him on his 18th birthday. And I opened it up and started shaking. I was overwhelmed with the content coming at me. And what was insane to me is how many ads. It felt like every other post was an ad. Has it always been that way, or did I just not notice it? And so I'm just trying, I can't even scroll. I'm just going to post my post and get out of here, throw my phone across the room. I didn't want anything to do with it. But I just was wondering, I saw probably in the 5 minutes I was on there, 7 or 8 different ads. Has anyone ever bought, just be honest, you're in church, you came all this way. Those of you who are online, let us know in the comments. Has anyone bought anything off an Instagram ad before? Be on it. Oh, wow. Okay, that's why they do it. Okay, never mind. I understand the business model now. I wasn't sure, but now I see. Now I get it. Okay. Well, my hand is up too. I've bought a couple things off of Instagram. And some of the things that I get advertised, I'm like, does the algorithm know me? How would they think I would want this? And so what I thought I would do, just kind of kick this morning off, is I thought I would show you a couple ads that are on Instagram, real products that you could actually buy today. And here's what I have you do. I want you to turn to someone next to you, so make sure you see someone next to you, 2s or 3s, whatever you need to do. And all you have to say is use it or lose it. And what do I mean by that? If you would use this product, look at them and say, I'd use it. If you would not use this product, say, lose it. So everyone say, use it or lose it. It's that simple. First one, this is a product. This is a real thing that you can buy right now. It is the Vent Sauce. The sauce No, this is real. It was on Shark Tank. It's a real thing. Use it or lose it. Think about it. Think about it. That Chick-fil-A sauce, think about it. Okay, all right. Okay, so we got some opinions, and maybe some purchases going on right now. Okay. Next one, this is an actual real product that you can buy right now today. It's the horizontal reading glasses. For when you're not tired enough to read, but too tired to just sit up. Just sit up. Use it or lose it. Your vote. Maybe you have it. All right. Next one, this isn't on Instagram, but this is just too good not to show. It is the automatic spaghetti fork. I think this is a brilliant invention. You just put it in your pasta and you press a button and it spins for you. It spins your spaghetti for you. Would you use it or would you lose it? Think about it. Could save you a lot of time and energy. This is really hard. What if you had a button? Think about it. Okay, this next one is a very real product. It is, it's the chip tip. It's the chip tip for whenever you have those chips that your fingers get all. Okay, wait. Just before you answer, before you answer, let me just show you how powerful this can be. Look at that. Fingers are totally clean. Now, here's the issue. At some point, I'm going to need to clean these, but I can use this until then. Last one, especially given all the weather we've been having here in Chicago this last week, it is the umbrella hat. Would you use it? That's a real thing. That's a real thing. Okay, maybe you're not. Okay, wait, before you vote. Now, would you use it or would you lose it? Pretty great. It's pretty great. I spent $10 whole on this. And somehow this umbrella hat was less than the tip chip thing. Use it or lose it. Here, and you know what? Sharice, the hair. Yeah, Yeah, good.
Almost.
That's taken a long time. Is it that bad? All right, good. Pit crew done. Give Sharice a hand. She nailed it. Doing God's work out here. Okay. Why would I go through the lengths of showing you all those things and now you can't get some of those products out of your mind? Why? It's because all of those were created at some point to help you do something faster or better. We love a good life hack. We love a good, how can I do this thing with less effort? Have you ever thought about the lengths that you will go to just to do the least? That's what all those products are for. I don't have time to twirl my spaghetti. Give me a button. Have you ever considered how much you actually do just to do as little as possible? You ever thought about that before? Whether it's at home or whether it's at work, we're always looking for ways to do less. True? I call it the minimum mandatory amount. What is it? That's the minimum mandatory amount. What's the least I have to do to make it count? And for me, lots of times when I was in college and well past college, when I needed to put gas in my car, I would go for the minimum mandatory amount. If I had $1.47 in the car, I bought $1.47 worth of gas and just prayed that thing kept rolling. Maybe you've done that too. You think about the microwave, that's a minimum mandatory amount. What's the fastest time I can cook this food in the most nuclear way possible? The Instant Pot. We use the Instant Pot this week in our family. It's that I want to do more by actually doing less. You think about how much money people spend just to pay less on taxes every year, so they can pay the minimum mandatory amount. We're always looking for a way to do. Let's just be honest. We're looking for ways to do the minimum mandatory amount, especially, and don't miss this, especially when it comes to God. If we were to be really honest. Are there times where you find yourself just wanting to do, okay, what do I have to do so that God's okay with me and so that I can cross it off the list? I'll just confess, it'll be me. There are plenty of times when it comes to prayer where I'm looking to do the minimum mandatory amount. What do I have to do? We have to pray for this meal? Okay, thank you God for this meal. Okay, let's go. Minimum mandatory amount, got prayer checked off, done. I'm in a commitment right now of 50 days of reading the Bible every single morning before I touch anything else, before I look at anything else. And I'm not going to lie, there are days where I'm like, I need that verse of the day. That's all I've got time for. And preferably, can someone read it to me? I just need someone to read it. It's a minimum mandatory amount. And look, if you've ever done the minimum mandatory amount with God, I am not here to judge you. I just shared with you my own confession. I'm just trying to help us see and pay attention. Because while no one would want to admit it, I believe that lots of us, many of us, maybe even most of us, approach our relationship with God with this question in the back of our minds. What's the least amount to make it count? What's the least amount to make it somehow count for God? And if you've ever wondered that, consciously, unconsciously, it's not because you're a bad person. It's not because you're not doing enough. Look, I just told you about ways that I look to do the minimum mandatory amount, and I'm on God's payroll, and I'm still doing that. So this is not about judgment. It's not about that at all. We all do it. It's nothing new, and it's actually nothing unique to me or to you, but it's definitely something that can keep you from the fullness of your life with God. Doing the minimum mandatory amount with God will keep you from being the type of person that God created you to be and to doing the types of things that Jesus is inviting you to do. So this weekend, I just want us to look at a very famous story from the teachings of Jesus, one that you probably are somewhat at least familiar with, and one that I've taught here multiple times. So nothing new here, but it's one this weekend that I want to maybe have you look at through a different lens so that you can answer a better question at the end. So grab a Bible and turn to Luke chapter 10. If you have a Bible with you or you've got it on your phone, awesome, you can do that. Luke chapter 10. If you're with us online, just open up a tab, do whatever you have to do. There's a Soul City Bible. See people just reach over and grab that. It's on page 843. If you don't have a Bible, grab this Bible. It's right under your seat. Page 843 will get you to Luke chapter 10. We're going to see the minimum mandatory amount at work in this story, in this interaction. Now, Luke 10, Jesus is well into his ministry years, and lots of times when Jesus would be at a particular place teaching, oh, that's what you were trying to tell me about. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. It's my hair standing up. Thank you. That's a real one right there. So when Jesus would be in a particular place teaching, there would be religious leaders standing in the corners, watching and listening to him, hoping to take him out and to take him down, because he was a threat to them, right? So in this situation, there are all these religious leaders that are standing around Jesus, and he's having a conversation with one of them who was kind of like a lawyer and a religious leader. See, in Jesus' culture in that day, and in many cultures to this day, law and religion were kind of all the same thing. There was no like separation of church and state. They just got their peanut butter and their chocolate and their peanut butter. It was all mixed up, right? It was all one thing. So this expert in the law, this lawyer, was also an expert in religion. Okay, context. So Luke chapter 10, verse 25. On one occasion when Jesus was teaching, an expert in the law stood up to, what's the word there? Stood up to what? Stood up to test Jesus. So just remember that. He stood up to test Jesus, and he said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Now, we can tell from the very setup of this question, this is not a sincere question. He's not asking Jesus an honest question. He's trying to back Jesus into a corner. And if you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, nobody puts Jesus in a corner. Nobody puts Jesus in a corner. That's a Dirty Dancing reference for the 7 people my age. All right, good. Good. It's okay. It's all right. Good. So what does Jesus do in this moment? He answers his question with a question. He says back to the lawyer, "What is written in the law? How do you read it? How do you interpret it?" And this expert in the law answered correctly. He said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." He nailed his answer. And Jesus said, "You've answered correctly." Jesus replied, "Now go and do that. Just do that and you will live." Like you know the answer. Go and do that. And this should have been the end of the story, where the lawyer says, "Great, thanks, Jesus, I'll go do that," and then walks off. But that's not where the story ends, because this lawyer is now feeling defensive, because he gave the right answer, but he knew that he wasn't living that way. And so his posture shifts in verse 29. So it says this. It says he wanted to, what's the word? It says this lawyer wanted to what? To justify himself. Okay. Well, okay. I'm going to make his case. He's going to prove why he's doing it the right way. He wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus another what he thought was trick question. Then who's my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Help me understand. In other words, this is the minimum mandatory amount. You see it right there. Who do I have to love is just another way of saying, who don't I have to love? That's what he's asking Jesus here. And instead of answering this question, again, Jesus now tells a story, all prompted by that question, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Jesus says, let me answer that. I'm going to tell you a little story real quick. And so he goes on to tell a story of what you've probably maybe heard before, the Good Samaritan. He says this, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, put a pin in that, and when he was attacked by robbers, they stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, and they went away, leaving him half dead. It's a rough start to the story, Jesus. But what he's wanting them to know, and he gave a very specific detail, he was going from Jerusalem down to Jericho. This is a very famous but dangerous path called the Way of Blood. It was a very, very dangerous path, but that indication there from Jerusalem to Jericho meant that he was a Jew. So to Jesus' Jewish audience, they would have recognized, wait a second, something bad happened to one of our own. So Jesus goes on and continues with the story. He says this, so this guy is beaten, he's left for dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and all the priests and religious leaders they started, pulling up their robes and getting all excited. When he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. Now remember, Jesus is speaking to a group of religious leaders, and he has the religious leader do nothing for the person in need. Maybe this priest prayed for him as he kind of crossed the street and walked by. Maybe he posted to social #thoughts and prayers and kept on walking, but he did nothing. Verse 32, it happens again. Jesus says there was a Levite. Levites were kind of like the junior assistant managers to the religious leaders. So they were kind of there, but a little bit more relatable to the everyday person. A Levite came to that place, and he saw him, and he passed by on the other side as well. He did nothing. But Jesus isn't done with his story. Lots of times in Jesus' stories, he'll use the rule of three, where he'll give three examples, and it's the third one that you usually need to pay attention to. And this is what he says in verse 33. He says this, "But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him." Now, this is some classic Jesus being Jesus stuff right here. Because what he chose to do was he chose to actually make the one person that does something for the person in need a Samaritan. And for context, if you know anything kind of about that day, Jesus' day, Jews hated Samaritans for all kinds of reasons we don't have time to go into. They hated Samaritans. So Jesus intentionally chooses the bad guy to be the good guy. He chose the wrong person, according to them, to do the right thing. Think about even the title. If you look up, is there a little title to this section of your Bible, the story? What's it called? The Good Samaritan. What's the implication? That the rest aren't that good. Think about it. This is a good one, right? So even you can just kind of even see that mindset. Jesus is like, no, I'm going to flip the whole script on you. And so in verse 34, it says that he actually went on to bandage him up and bandage his wounds and pour oil and wine on him. Then he put the man in his own donkey and he brought him to an inn to take care of him. Notice the detail that Jesus is giving here. He could have just said, the Samaritan helped him. But he's like, no, here's specifically what this person did. All of those things have their own deep and unique meaning as well. But he says in verse 35 that he wasn't done there, that the next day he actually gave 2 denarii and gave it to the innkeeper where he was staying. And he said, look after him. And when I return, I'll reimburse you for every cent, every expense that you have spent on this person. 2 denarii is about 2 weeks to 2 months' salary. And he gives that and says, there's more where that came from, whatever it takes to take care of him. He serves and he gives. He gives physically of himself and he gives financially of himself. So Jesus gets to this kind of culmination of the story and he pauses, and I bet you could feel it in the room. He pauses and he looks that religious leader right in the eye, and now he asks him another question. Remember that the religious leader said, who is my neighbor? Jesus said back to him, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law knew how he had to answer. He had no other answer. He said, the one who had mercy on him. To which Jesus said, yep, now go and do likewise. Micah droppeth. Right there, boom. Jesus is cold. It's just boom. Who's the one that's got it right? The one who had mercy on him. Great, go do that. That's it. That's the answer to the question that you weren't even actually asking. See, this is too good. Jesus could tell that these religious leaders, that he told them to their faces that they should be more like the people that they liked the least. That the people that they thought were bad, actually, Jesus said, no, I'm making them good. And all your religion and all your rules don't mean squat if they don't cause you to care for a neighbor in need. If they don't cause you to see them and to go to them. It's a powerful teaching from Jesus. And I've read this story, like this is not like a Bible flex, which is the lamest flex of all, but I've read this story probably 100 times, probably maybe more in my life. I've taught it over a dozen times, multiple times at this very church. And every time I've read it and every time I've taught it, I missed something that I didn't see until this week. I don't know, maybe you caught it, but I missed it all these years until I was studying, preparing for our time together this week. And I missed something about the question that was being asked and the question that's at the heart of the story. See, I thought what prompted this whole story that Jesus just gave, this famous story, was the question, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? That was the question, right, that the religious leader asked, who is my neighbor? And it seems like that's the question that Jesus is trying to answer here. Like, at least on the surface, the answer seems from this story that your neighbor is someone who is hurting, someone who is abused, someone who is abandoned, someone who is in need, this person lying on the side of the road. But that's actually not the real question. And based on the inescapable, irrefutable teachings of Jesus, we actually already know the answer to that question. You don't even have to ask, who is my neighbor? Do you want to know who your neighbor is? It's everyone, everywhere, period. That's it. We already know the answer to that question. It's everyone, everywhere. That family on the south side that's struggling to pay rent, yep, that's your neighbor. That family on the North Shore with the 4-car garage, yep, that's your neighbor. That crazy conservative guy at work who listens to Joe Rogan all day without headphones in. It's your neighbor. That pushy progressive person that's in your study group that no matter what you say, they always have to tell you that you said it wrong. That's your neighbor. Who is my neighbor? Everyone, everywhere. That's actually an easy question to answer. And I don't think that's the real question that Jesus is bringing to the center of the story. See, I don't think the question is, who is my neighbor? I think the real question is, who are you? Who are you? This story is not about what types of people are your neighbor. It's what types of neighbors there are to others. Who are you? Who are you? Are you the kind of person that walks to those who are hurting? Or are you the kind of person that walks by? Are you the kind of person that gives of yourself, or are you the kind of person that gives lots of excuses? Are you the type of person that likes to serve with compassion, or are you the type of person that likes to just honestly seek comfort in your life? Who are you? Who are you? That's what Jesus is getting at in the story. Who are you? Who do you want to be like? How would you answer that question? Who did God make you to be, especially in light of when it comes to how you love others and serve others, how you give of yourself to others? Who are you? Maybe think of it, let's reframe it, ask it another way. What type of person are you? And get this follow-up question, what would that type of person do? Think about that. What type of person are you? Do you want to be? Do you claim to be? Do you desire to be? Awesome. What do they do? And whatever they do, do that. Go and do likewise. What type of person are you? And then what does that type of person actually do? See, this last weekend, our church got to celebrate all of the Chicago Marathon. It literally runs right in front of our church. And so many of you were out to celebrate our runners. We had over 100 runners run from our church. 76 of them ran with Team World Vision. This is a side note. It has nothing to do with the message. Did you know of those 76 people, they raised over $98,000 for clean water in Africa? How incredible is that? That's incredible. And then they ran 26 miles. Anyway, I was thinking back after, the marathon was this last weekend, back to when I ran the marathon the one time that I ran the marathon. And I was thinking back to my training this last week, and I was thinking of how much I hated it. I just really hated it. I hated running. I would dread every long run. I knew that I'd be in a bad mood afterwards. I knew that I'd be sore afterwards. I mean, I would leave the house and it's like, this may be the last time I see my wife and kids. I'm not going to make it through. I hate running. And it wasn't until somewhere around halfway through my training that my buddy Chitwood stopped me and kind of helped me reframe things, gave me a whole new perspective on running. He said to me something that I still have not forgotten to this day. He said, you need to stop trying to run and start being a runner. You need to stop trying to run and start being a runner. And I'm like, okay, Yoda, what the heck does that mean? What do you think I'm doing out here? He's like, no. Once you believe that you are a runner, you'll start doing the things that runners do. But you have to believe you are a runner. And you know what? He was right. As soon as I began to see myself as a runner, I began to see everything else differently. What do runners do? They get good sleep. They drink lots of water. They keep going when it's hard. That's what runners do. I'm a runner. That's what I'm going to do. What type of person do you want to be? And what would that type of person do? I think that's the invitation that Jesus is really getting at the heart of this story. To be who you were meant to be and to do the types of things that type of person would do. If I'm a good neighbor, what is it that good neighbors do? Good neighbors look out for the well-being of everyone around them. Good neighbors open up their home and their lives to others. Good neighbors show up when people are hurting. Good neighbors stand up when people are being mistreated. Good neighbors give out of joy and generosity. That's just some of what good neighbors do. And when you begin to see yourself as actually a good neighbor, you'll begin to do those things too. To actually do what a good neighbor would do. This last Sunday night, every other Sunday night, we host all of Soul City high school students in our house. And lots of them are here in this gathering, and we have pizza. And basically, me and Jeannie's job is kind of set everything up and then get as far away as possible so we don't embarrass our kids. We understand. And so afterwards, we were cleaning up, and we had a couple extra pizzas. And in my mind, I was like, well, just what a bummer. What a waste of money. I'll just throw these away. And thankfully, a prompting from my wife said, Jarrett, there's people who could use this right now, not far from us. And so I became a pizza delivery guy. And I drove to a couple spots in our neighborhood where I know folks are at the CTA station, and just walked around giving people pizza. And I'm not going to say like it was this awesome, deep thing. I was just giving out of what I had. And what struck me as I got back in my car and drove to my nice home is, why don't I do that more? Have I just begun to do the minimum mandatory amount with God, especially when it comes to loving others? Even when it's hard, even when it costs me something, am I just trying to do just enough? Or might I, like God, do and give of all of myself, just as God has done that for me? See, the bottom line is simply this: God formed you to be for others. He formed you to be for others. God is for you, and He made you to be for others. You are, listen to me, you are a good neighbor. You are a good neighbor, so act like one. Act like one. God has placed you where He has placed you with a purpose and a plan bigger than you could imagine. So live into that. Live up to that. Doesn't mean you have to do everything. Doesn't mean you'll get it all right, but do what a good neighbor would do in whatever situation you find yourself in. Don't walk by, walk to. Don't assume someone else will come along. Assume that God sees you as that someone. Don't do the minimum mandatory amount. Just what's the least I have to do? Do as much as you can do. And as you do, I promise you, you'll be answering that question. Who are you? So I'm going to pray for each of us towards that end. And if you would, I'm going to ask you to stand, and then we'll be done with our time together here today. We're going to pray together. We like to take a posture of open hands when we pray. If you're comfortable with that, I'd ask you to do that. And we're going to pray. Again, we're going to pray to God that we would be who God created us to be. So God, we thank you for this awesome story and for the question at the center of it all. God, help us see who you want us to be, who you created us to be, how you formed us to be for others. And God, I pray for every neighbor here in this room, online, listening later. God, I pray that you would help us live into who you made us to be good neighbors, to do what good neighbors do. Whether anyone ever sees it, whether anyone ever hears about it, whether we post about it or not, no, you just called us to be good neighbors. You'll take care of the rest, God. And when we can't see how it'll all work out, and we can't see if it's all going to make sense, God, we're going to choose to trust you like we choose to trust you with everything else in our life. And God, I believe that you're going to bring people. I believe that you're going to bring situations. I believe that you're going to bring opportunities into our lives today for us to practice being a good neighbor. God, help us to be that. Help us to do that. Help us to answer that question well. Who are we? We are good neighbors. That's who we are. Sons and daughters of God, created in His image. We're good neighbors. God, I pray that would be true of me and true of my friends here today. In your name we pray. Amen.